Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness. I want to just go into a little flow. It's morning for me, just waking up, having my coffee. So, cheers. Let's play. And so there is a new influx of energies, if you will, yet again. And here we are telling you about this or sharing this with you yet again. And many of the messages we share again and again can be utilized at different times during different scenarios and different situations, and they come with a similar syntax, a similar expression. I'm hearing a simile, like play on words here. One of the things we continuously work with is wordplay, and another is to recognize when energies that are coming in are coming in so we can feel them. So feeling is another topic that is repeated over and over again. I'm hearing many have lost that loving feeling. There are a whole group of individuals who may not come across this particular message in this particular style or this particular format or font, meaning this video that I'm sharing with now, because those individuals aren't looking outside of themselves, nor are they even looking inside of themselves. They are looking constantly outside of themselves, not looking for any form or identification with self-realization. And these individuals we see floating around in our world that hold less of a coherence than the individuals who are coming into self-realization, if you will, or recognizing one's self versus the identification with a person, a personality. So we are sharing this because as this energy comes in and as these realities create a different spin, or as you create an individual spin within these realities, there will be more and more people who are no longer in alignment with the reality that we see. So the first topic of sharing is do not be alarmed if there are certain people that no longer show up in your reality that you are used to seeing. For these individuals have moved into a different expression, if you will. And while we speak of this happening more and more in the future, we are sharing with this information with you now, for it is something that many are starting to recognize or feel. The energies that are coming in are supportive of feeling. And so we are inviting all to feel again and again and again. For as we pay attention to our feelings, we recognize we are human from one perspective, and we are partly here to express and to coordinate within these feelings. So if we can use them for a greater expression, it allows us to move through the feelings that are from a lower expression, if we wish to label them as such, and begin to come into a higher form of feeling and expression. So what I'm being shown as I'm saying this are a couple of things. One of the things is that obviously the guides are like, feel, recognize it, because it's when we're not feeling something, and I did a whole video on this. I've done a few videos on this. It's dissonance. It's a type of disconnect. It's a type of not being able to connect into our sensory system. And this has been, we've been in a world of desensitization. Desensitize, this is a play on words. Like I'm hearing not able to use our senses. There's so much violence that we've watched that now when we see it, I cringe when I see it, but I also recognize that it's normal on television, if that makes sense. And so we begin to desensitize and normalize certain things that really aren't, that we want to be sensitive to. And this also has to do with our connections with each other. So if we're constantly on our phones and we're constantly looking at a screen, or we constantly have a buffering zone, is what I'm hearing, between us and someone else. That also is a type of desensitizing. We become less, I'm hearing we become more analytical, we become less, and we're not able to necessarily handle this is twofold, feelings that do come up because we're not used to feeling. So some people are going to be overwhelmed by these feelings that are coming up that they haven't processed. So that's number one. Others are not going to be able to get in touch with their feelings, so they won't recognize or know themselves. So all of a sudden, you know, they're going to witness something and not understand why it's happening. Or they might say something along the lines of, I've never felt this way before. So I'm being called that this is what I'm being shown the energies are that are coming in. I'm hearing it's tripping some people up and waking up some people. So there are going to be people who maybe never felt what they're feeling now, and they're going to start looking around, becoming more sensitive and going, wow, what is this? Or like seeing the world with new eyes. So there's all different levels and layers of what they're showing. And they're showing me kind of bandwidths that are coming in through, like, from the sun and from different planetary alignments. And depending on our own ability, like, I'm being guided to play with this a little bit. Sorry, had to stop for a moment. So one of the things that my guides are talking about is separating emotion and feeling. So what happens is sometimes we'll have a feeling come in, and I'm being called to play with this, so I will. And I tend to put everything all into one package. I tend to not compartmentalize the words that I use because that's the way that my guides essentially allow me to drop in and be open to everything. But every once in a while, there's this need to differentiate. And what I'm being shown is, in order for us to differentiate what it is that we want versus what we don't want, to differentiate between a feeling and an emotion. Is this mine, or is this something that I'm feeling coming up collectively? So I'm just going to go on this little AI overview. And I just typed in feeling versus emotion. And I know this is going to be redundant for some people, but it's good to just have a reminder sometime as to, oh yeah, I forgot there is a difference. So the main difference between feelings and emotions is that feelings are consciously experienced, while emotions can be experienced consciously or subconsciously. Emotions are chemical reactions in the body that are triggered by something, such as perceiving danger. Feelings, it says, emotions are not conscious but can be discovered through thoughts, beliefs, desires, and actions. Feelings are physical and mental sensations that arise when emotions are internalized. Feelings are how people interpret emotions and let them sink in. Feelings can be distorted by stories people have created based on past experiences. Now, I find this interesting because they're still really hard to differentiate, because it's saying that emotions are discovered through thoughts, beliefs, desires, and actions, but those can also be distorted because they're based on a story. So understanding the difference between feelings and emotions, basically what we feel, right, is usually in response to an emotion. And this is saying how we interpret our emotions. So I feel angry. Well, anger is an emotion. The feeling of the anger, right, in that expression, and I'm not exactly getting this right. I'm just telling you my perspective. And I'm sure that somebody else, a doctor or someone, would have a much better, or a therapist. But what I also feel guided to say is the feelings are conscious. So we're aware that we feel hot, we might be aware that we feel cold, right? But if we're feeling angry, right? I'm just using this as an example. They're saying that the emotions manifest consciously or subconsciously. So we're feeling it, so now it's becoming conscious. Now, this is part of why my guides are kind of saying, stay with this. We're being called to allow these emotions that we're feeling to come up, to consciously be aware of them. Now, how we choose to express that emotion or feeling is up to us. But the more conscious we can become in association with some of these trapped emotions, the more availability and access we have to a multiple sensations and feelings. So basically, we are this incredibly, we have an incredible varietal of feelings that we have the ability to work through. And the more we can disassociate, is what I'm hearing, and dislodge the stuck and trapped emotions with those feelings, the more feeling we can have without the attached emotions, if that makes sense. So what I'm seeing is the more we grow, the more we shift, the more we allow ourselves to feel. Let's use the anger for an example, because I've experienced this recently as I've shared. I have a feeling of anger. I recognize that anger is an emotion. It feels this way in my body. I feel tense, or my stomach's upset, or whatever that feeling is that is now physical, conscious, and knowing. Why do I feel this way? Well, in asking the question and in recognizing and acknowledging that I'm having that feeling that is attached to anger, I can now choose to clear and integrate that attachment if I, in that moment. Or I can recognize that I don't know why. I'm just feeling angry. And it might be because I was just at a grocery store and the woman next to me was extremely angry. And I happened to pick up on that. And somehow, somewhere in my own energy center, it activated or triggered that same emotion inside of me that maybe I hadn't processed, or that I felt that I didn't realize was there, but somehow that matched that frequency. So in that moment, I can either choose to align more with it and maybe do a little shadow work and dig it out, or I can recognize what happened and go, oh yeah, I wasn't feeling angry until I was at the grocery store and this woman was really upset. And then that kind of stuck with me throughout the rest of the day. And then I started to react or be triggered by more angry people. I tended to see more angry people throughout the day. And I thought, wow, a lot of people are angry today. But then I allowed myself to be triggered and came into anger, which in essence can be a blessing, because that means in some cases that I haven't processed my own anger around the price of groceries, or, whatever it might be. That's a minor example, of course. It could be a big example that many people are feeling triggered on right now, which is, war. I feel triggered and angry the fact that people are still fighting each other. Yet that feeling and emotion is attached to anger, which is actually then attached to fear. What am I fearful of? So these are all different things. We're just being called to be more conscious. So when we have a collective of humans who are now consciously aware of our own emotions and our feelings around these emotions and circumstances, then we're less likely to be triggered by one another, or we're more likely to be triggered and then we're more aware, which gives us an opportunity to actually work through things in real time, consciously, and faster. So I'm hearing faster versus fester. So like a lot of this stuff has been festering for a long time, these unchecked emotions. And so I'm just being called to I recognize this within myself. Therefore, I recognize it within other people. It also gives me an opportunity to forgive myself. It gives me an opportunity to forgive another person who might be experiencing something and they just might react and emotionally, I'm seeing project onto us. So we might all be experiencing this a little bit. I know I've been places and I've thought, why is that person so angry with me? They're not angry with me. They're angry and they're not balancing out that emotion. I'm hearing it's just gone unchecked. Now, so if we all did this consciously, what happens is we become more conscientious. We become a walking, rather than a walking reaction, we become a walking, I'm hearing moving, understanding. It becomes more interactive. So that outside, we get to, I'm hearing we get to the heart of the matter. And that's a play on words. We come back to the heart. We come back into a place of almost a collective space of gratitude for having this opportunity in such a short amount of time to work through some of these unchecked, unprocessed, unregulated chemical reactions that are attached to feelings and emotions. So the guides are bringing it all back to the feeling. Part of the reason I'm being shown this also is as we activate our higher, so this is important. So I'm going to give a Kundalini activation example. If someone hasn't done any shadow work or any, I don't even want to call it shadow work, but let's say that a person hasn't dealt with some of the things in their life, such as loss of a loved one, or maybe they had a divorce that they haven't processed, or they were abused as a child or neglected. And then there's this Kundalini awakening that happens, which can happen to anyone depending on what's going on in their lives. Let's say they're doing a lot of yoga. In my case, I was doing a lot of yoga, which also included me doing some personal work. But when it happens, all of those emotions that are stored inside the cellular memory of the body, and I'm being called to talk about water. We're hearing a lot more. Dr. Masaru Emoto, I've referenced him many times. And even the Ho'oponopono prayer and the story behind that other doctor, I can't remember his name right now, but Ho'oponopono, you can look that up. My point is, energy is energy, and it's stored in water, and our bodies are what, 70% water, 80% water. So here we are pulling all this stuff up, and if you have a Kundalini awakening where that energy at the base of the spine starts to go up, opens up the cerebral spinal fluid, things get activated, and our extrasensory abilities start to come on. And then we get flooded with chemicals. And these chemicals can stir our body up. So again, I'm hearing know thyself. And if we don't know ourselves, we can get lost in those emotions. We can get lost in those feelings. And when that happens, it can cause mental disturbances. We can feel as if we're going crazy. We can feel as if the world around us is going crazy because we become more sensitive to everything. Now, I'm just using that as an example. And the reason I'm being called to use that as an example is more and more people are starting to have out-of-body experiences, telepathy, Kundalini activations, remembering a past life, clairvoyance, all the clairs. So it may not be all those things, but if all of us are having one of those things happen, and we're not used to having that, or even if we are used to having it, but we haven't necessarily worked with our emotions, it's going to stir up a lot of stuff. And in actuality, my guides are like, yes, that's good. Even though it may not feel because it's foreign. It's not something we're used to experiencing. It's not something we're used to feeling. Now, for those of you who are constantly going through this, that's a whole other can of worms. I went through it for several years, and I still have these bouts of Kundalini stuff because even though I've done a lot of work, I still have more apparently at certain times to do. And from a broader perspective, that's my choice. I'm making that choice. Part of me could say, nope, I'm done. Let's just be in sunshine and rainbows for the rest of this journey. And so that's a choice too. So I'm just being called to remind everybody that we do have a choice in how we experience it, even if it doesn't feel like we do at the time. Something about that is really relevant right now because there tends to be this victimizer mentality that a lot of people I'm hearing are breaking the chains, right? So if you think about that, there's several ways of looking at it. They're saying breaking the chains, like obviously the link to that belief. But also this has to do with DNA. If we are doing the work now and we're clearing this stuff out now, we are making it easier for future generations. And we're also helping our past generations because we are in the now and everything is happening now. So it is having an impact in our cellular makeup and body and a ripple effect through this space, field, quantum entanglement, right? To all versions of ourselves, all versions of our past ancestors. It's all connected. So what happens is if we are all doing this work collectively, consciously, even though it seems messy, it's having a huge impact in a very positive way. So doing our best to stay positive about it and recognize ourself as a resource for an extreme potential growth and moving into that space of enlightenment is part of what this journey, this maybe what all of this journey is about in this lifetime, in this reality. So I'm being called to get back into the feeling. So this can cause us, and I'm being called to go back into like all the different. So if you're all of a sudden having these memories, and I'm going to share my own personal experience. I was having nightmares of these two children who looked sickly in my dream, and I kept trying to protect them. This was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I would say approximately. Oh, I'm getting emotional. Now, here's a perfect example in real time. So this is my process. I'm sharing my process with you guys and what I did. And I'm still emotionally charged because it was such a big aha. So it might have been a little longer than 7 years, but I've been having these dreams. And for me, a lot of my power or extrasensory abilities began with dreams when I was a child. So I was dreaming of these two children who were from Africa, and they had like white, they looked chalky, like they'd been in dust. And it was a little girl and a little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old. And one was 5, one was 7, or, young. Actually younger than that, now that I remember. I'm hearing the nope, they were younger, remember? Anyways, so what's happening is I would dream about them and they were trying to get me to help them and I couldn't help them. And at another point, I dreamed that there was an angel who was holding on to one of them. And I had the little boy, she had the little girl, and I wasn't letting the little boy go. Like, you can't have him, even though in my dream, I knew this was an angel. And what was happening was, this is simultaneous with some Kundalini activations I was having. I was remembering my children, I'm getting emotional again, from a previous lifetime where they had died and I couldn't help them. So I actually knew this, but I had a session with Daniel Scranton. If you've never had a session with him, I highly recommend it. and the Arcturians, and they confirmed. And all I said was, I'm having a dream about these two African children, and I'm not sure why. And he came right out and said, they were your kids in a previous lifetime. They died from malaria, and you were unable to save them. And then brought forward that I'd had this happen a lot in many lifetimes. I'd lost children over and over and over again. A lot of difficult times being a mother, which is part of the reason I don't have children in this lifetime. I have a furry four-legged child. So this is something I'm sharing because I'm still emotional over it. And when I cleared that, I was able to then forgive myself. I was able to feel that emotion that was still attached to those children. And whenever I say my prayers now, I always send blessings to, most of the time, sometimes I forget, but I send blessings to my children from all lifetimes. I send blessings to my ancestors from all lifetimes. No matter what those ancestors, were, I'm still going to send them blessings and appreciation, because were it not for them, I would not be here now as who I am today. So I send blessings to all beings, no matter what race those beings are, whether they're blue and from the stars, whether they're dragons, whether they're reptilians, right? Whether they're human. I send blessings to the rocks and the trees and all animals, so on and so forth. Now, I'm saying this because a lot of people might start having this happen. As that's a for instance. Simultaneously, if they're having these ahas, it can freak them out. It can freak out the people around them. It can make them feel emotional, afraid, angry. Sometimes we'll have this cellular memory come up, but we're not really sure why or what it's attached to. And that's where doing the work can sometimes help. Therapy or any type of movement, yoga, to help move those energies out and to ask ourselves, be curious, why am I feeling this emotion? Sometimes it might be on a date that's collectively tied to a big collective memory where something negative happened, and I will let you fill in the blanks. So there's all kinds of reasons, but what we're really being invited to do is feel fully into whatever it is that we are feeling, experiencing, recognizing, remembering. And again, this opens our channels up so that we become clearer about who we're becoming, who it is that we were, what it is that we wish to create inside of our lives, in our bodies, in our realities. And so a lot of the energies that are coming in are doing us a favor, is what I'm hearing, a service. And this allows us to be of greater service to the whole, to the entire, I'm hearing to the kingdom, if you will, which the crown, the kingdom, connection to source, the loving energy that moves through all things, whatever we want to label that as. So that's the message, essentially. Feel, recognize the emotions that maybe we've attached to the feelings, and be okay with whatever it is that we're feeling, recognizing that it's okay to have feelings. And I talked about this in a previous video, and I think this is relevant. Some people aren't able to feel. And the way that my guide said that, well, you can, but you just have to remember how. And that includes getting in touch with touch, feeling skin, getting a massage, getting in the ocean, feeling the cold, the temperatures and warmth and cold, tasting, really just taking a moment to unplug from being unplugged, meaning reconnect with yourself. And a lot of us are overstimulated, so that can create a disconnect, or understimulated because our senses are primarily our vision connected to what we're reading, what we're watching on television, that then connects into our emotional body. And what happens is we then get locked into a pattern of that adrenaline and cortisol release. So we think that we need that adrenaline and cortisol, or subconsciously, we crave that cortisol release because it makes us feel alive, because we're so disconnected from the sensations that a human should be having without all of that, which is recognizing the beauty in a tree, feeling your feet on the grass, you know, having a bee land on you and lightly touching a bee. I mean, things like this that we just aren't, a lot of us are just not used to doing anymore. Not that I'm suggesting you should go out and pet a bee, but I'm just saying it's about those sensations. And I'm hearing over sensationalized sensations have actually left us desensitized. So finding those connection points again will reestablish those connection points and allow us to feel more connection points. I'll do another video on oversensitized if that seems like it'd be helpful with Kundalini, with the clairs and all of that. So, but in the meantime, in love and light, guys, feeling the emotions, allowing the emotions to move through, not judging, feeling from a place of contentment, or feeling the release of some of these, allowing that release to come up so that we can be in fuller expression of our true essence, which is not all of the judgments we have around the emotions. So, in love and light, namaste.